Hello, here we are. We're going to finish the book of Ruth with chapter 4, and we're going to go into 1 Samuel. Samuel was a prophet, and we're going to read the first chapter there, perhaps the second. We'll see how it goes. All right, so we remember that, Naomi had sent Ruth to Boaz, and Boaz has to go and find the guardian redeemer that's closer to him than he is in the family. And he's got to find out if that guardian redeemer wants to take the job of covering Ruth and Naomi first. And if he doesn't, then Boaz has pledged to take care of the two of them, to be their covering, so to speak. So here we go. Or it could just be, that he's, well, we'll just read it. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech." I said Eli Melech yesterday, first time, and then I was just pronouncing it Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me so I will know, for no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line, meaning after this other guardian redeemer. I will redeem it, he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth, the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." Now, maintaining the name of the dead usually means marrying the widow and giving her children so that the man's name will continue on. So included in this deal is Ruth, okay? At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself," and he removed his sandal. And that would be right because he was the next in line, but he's telling Boaz, "You can do it," because he doesn't want to endanger his own estate by taking on a Moabite woman who is a foreigner. But see, Boaz, we can imagine, cares for Ruth very much. So this is a good deal in his eyes, okay? We didn't hear about the selling of the land, but maybe that was part and parcel of Naomi's plan in getting Ruth a good home is, look, you'll come with a piece of land, and that would make her more attractive because Naomi is most likely getting old and wants to make sure that Ruth is taken care of. All right. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself," and he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon, the two sons of Naomi and Elimelech. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." I like that. That's neat that they do that. Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who's coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephratah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. And if you've been with me, you remember that story that Tamar got a child from Judah because Judah was faithless after his son died. I think his first two sons died, and they were married to Tamar. The first one died. The second one wouldn't give her the son to keep the brother's name going. And then the third one, they had to wait for him to grow up to give him to Tamar, and Judah just never gave him. So Tamar played a trick on Judah, pretending to be a prostitute, and got pregnant by him. But she was hidden. He didn't know it was Tamar, his son's widow. And so, of course, he had to relent and repent, and the son Perez was born. Be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He'll renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son." Remember, Naomi lost Elimelech, her husband, and her sons Mahlon and Chilion. And they named him Obed, O-B-E-D. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David, who is King David, okay, or who will be King David. You know, this always kind of reminded me of me having a granddaughter, sort of like I got a daughter through my daughter. Even though this is Ruth's son, they're saying, you know, it says Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him, and the women living there said Naomi has a son. And that's kind of how I felt. And then, of course, I ended up raising my granddaughter, but that was just more awesomeness for me. All right, so here's the genealogy of David, who becomes King David. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Ram, which is R-A-M. Ram, the father of Amminadab. Amminadab, the father of Nahshon. Nahshon, the father of Salmon, spelled just like the fish, S-A-L-M-O-N. Salmon, the father of Boaz. Boaz, the father of Jesse. And Jesse, the father, Boaz, the father of Obed. Obed, the father of Jesse. Jesse, the father of David. Now we know that Jesus Christ came through the line, out of the line of David, King David. So this is the beginning. All right, so let's do 1 Samuel chapter 1. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zuphite, Z-U-P-H-I-T-E, from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, T-O-H-U, the son of Zuph, Z-U-P-H, an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. One was called Hannah, and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. Year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh. Remember, Shiloh's where the Ark of the Covenant is, okay? Where Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her. This is a little bit like Leah and Rachel. Remember, Rachel couldn't bear until she finally had Joseph and then Benjamin, and it was during the birth of Benjamin that she passed away. All right, so he gave Hannah a double portion because he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb. Okay, now we don't know if that means infertility, or when I hear closed womb, I think of the cervix being closed. That is absolutely a real possibility, okay? That means if the cervix, which is the bottom of what looks like a rounded hot water bottle, which is the woman's womb, if the cervix is closed, then there's not going to be any fertilizing happening, okay? So I don't know if it's just a statement or, you know, to just, we don't really know, is it infertility or is it literally a closed womb? But I'm just telling you that a closed womb is a physical possibility, okay? Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. So Peninnah was making fun of her, just like Leah and Rachel fought. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her till she wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah would say to her, Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons? Once when they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah stood up. Now Eli the priest was sitting on his chair by the doorpost of the Lord's house, which would be the temple where the Ark of the Covenant with the 10 Commandments in it is enclosed in this temple. In her deep anguish, Hannah prayed to the Lord, weeping bitterly, and she made a vow, saying, Lord Almighty, if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head, sort of like Samson. As she kept on praying to the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was praying in her heart, but her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. Eli thought she was drunk and said to her, how long are you going to stay drunk? Put away your wine. Not so, my lord, Hannah replied. I'm a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I've been praying here out of great anguish and grief. Eli answered, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. She said, may your servant find favor in your eyes. Then she went away and ate something, and her face was no longer downcast. Early the next morning, they arose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramah. Elkanah made love to his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Hannah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, saying, because I asked the Lord for him. When her husband Elkanah went up with all his family to offer the annual sacrifice to the Lord and to fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, after the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always. So she's going to dedicate him to the temple. Do what seems best to you, her husband Elkanah told her. Stay here until you've weaned him. Only may the Lord make good his word. So the woman stayed at home and nursed her son until she had weaned him. Because I'm assuming when he goes to make the annual sacrifices, it probably takes a long travel time and then travel time back. After he was weaned, she took the boy with her, young as he was, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. When the bull had been sacrificed, they brought the boy to Eli, the priest, and she said to him, pardon me, my lord, as surely as you live, I'm the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. Okay, so let's do 2 to get a little more clarity. All right. Then Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in your deliverance. There is no one holy like the Lord. There's no one beside you. Besides you, there's no rock like our God. Do not keep talking so proudly or let your mouth speak such arrogance, for the Lord is a God who knows, and by him deeds are weighed. The bows of the warriors are broken, but those who stumbled are armed with strength. Those who were full hire themselves out for food, but those who were hungry are hungry no more." So in other words, the ones that are already full are literally prostituting themselves for more food. "But those who were hungry are hungry no more. She who was barren has borne 7 children, but she who has had many sons pines away." Well, that's definitely a response to Peninnah. "The Lord brings death and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and raises up. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and he exalts. He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. He seats them with princes and has them inherit a throne of honor. For the foundations of the earth are the Lord's. On them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful servants, but the wicked will be silenced in the place of darkness. It is not by strength that one prevails. Those who oppose the Lord will be broken. The Most High will thunder from heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed." Then Elkanah went home to Ramah, but the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli, the priest. Eli's sons were scoundrels. They had no regard for the Lord. Now, it was practice of the priests that whenever any of the people offered a sacrifice, the priest's servants would come with a 3-pronged fork in his hand while the meat was being boiled and would plunge the fork into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot. Whatever the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. This is how they treated all the Israelites who came to Shiloh. Remember, the Lord decreed that the Levites should have their portion from all the offerings. But even before the fat was burned, the priest's servants would come and say to the person who was sacrificing, "Give the priest some meat to roast. He won't accept boiled meat from you, but only raw." If the person said to him, "Let the fat be burned first and then take whatever you want," the servant would answer, "No, hand it over now. If you don't, I'll take it by force." Okay, that is definitely not priestly and not how the Lord wanted these priests to be obedient, to behave, in the temple especially. This sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt, which means hate. Also, they're not representing the Lord properly, okay? They're making the Lord look like a bully. But Samuel was ministering before the Lord, a boy wearing a linen ephod. Okay, so he had a breastplate made of linen. Each year his mother made him a little robe and took it to him when she went up with her husband to offer the annual sacrifice. Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife, saying, "May the Lord give you children by this woman to take the place of the one she prayed for and gave to the Lord." Then they would go home, and the Lord was gracious to Hannah. She gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord, so he's under the covering and tutelage of Eli, learning how to be a priest in the temple. Now, Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to all Israel and how they slept with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? I hear from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. No, my sons, the report I hear spreading among the Lord's people is not good. If one person sins against another, God may mediate for the offender. But if anyone sins against the Lord, who will intercede for them?" Think about that. Who's going to intercede for you when you're stepping on the Lord's toes? His sons, however, didn't listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. And we know this about the Lord. When it comes to the Israelites not representing him properly or being sinful or just bringing evil in amongst them, the Lord removes them. He cleanses that flock. It's almost like if you had and I've told you this story before, I'm going to tell it again. I read a book by a shepherd on Psalm 23, which is the one, he causes me to lay down in green pastures. And he takes this whole chapter of Psalms apart. And he is a shepherd, the person who wrote this book. And he tells about a wonderful ewe sheep he had, a female sheep. Just a wonderful one as far as, stature and beauty, etc. But she was always breaking the fence and escaping. And then she started to lead the other sheep out. He killed her, slaughtered her. They ate her for dinner. He was a shepherd. He was a husband. He was into husbandry of animals. In other words, if one is doing that, you're not going to lose the whole flock because of one rebellious sheep that you have said over and over, that you've warned, that you've done everything to make sure this doesn't happen again. And she always finds a way to break that fence or open the gate. And now the rest of the flock is following. She's done. She's gone. And this is what the Lord is doing. It's just like when I used to have mice as pets, and I know that grosses some of you out, but they're just so cute. They're not wild. They're domestically bred, and I just adore them. And I don't have any at this time, but a couple of times I had them and they had babies. Like I would buy them and they would be pregnant. And if you've ever had to put one down that is born deformed or with a prolapsed backside, it's terrible, but you have to be that good of a husband to your farm, so to speak. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't put it down. I asked somebody at Petco to put the mouse down. It was hard for me. I'm not a great farmer. But, the ones that are really out there doing it are doing it for the good of the rest of the flock. So, this is, the Lord is saying he wanted to kill these two sons because they're just defiling, especially when they're defiling the most holy place the Israelites have got to come and bring the sacrifices. And, they're having sex, and the Lord has taught them that, and I know they're not worshiping the Lord with the sex they're having with the women who work at the temple, but even that practice is much like the pagans who do use sex as a form of worship. So, okay. All right. All right. His sons, however, did not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. So the Lord must have hardened their heart. And that's something we all want to make sure does not happen. We want to listen to the Lord before it's too late and he gets fed up and just said, boop, your heart's hard now. You won't be hearing from me anymore. And the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and with people. Now, a man of God came to Eli and said to him, this is what the Lord says. So this is a prophet. Did I not clearly reveal myself to your ancestors' family when they were in Egypt under Pharaoh? I chose your ancestor out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to go up to my altar. So this must be Aaron he's talking about. To burn incense and to wear an ephod in my presence. I also gave your ancestors' family all the food and offerings presented by the Israelites. Why do you scorn my sacrifice and offering that I prescribed for my dwelling? Why do you honor your sons more than me by fattening yourselves on the choice parts of every offering made by my people Israel? Now I'm going to say one more thing here. He's going to the father. He's not going to the sons. He's going to the father, okay? Because the father has a responsibility. So don't be a coward when you're raising your children. You must put your foot down and you must guide them. It doesn't matter if they scream, I hate you. Every hour, you must do it. You cannot pull back from standing up for what you know is right. Don't let your kids run roughshod all over you. Now, I know this may be unsolicited advice, but I'm attaching it to what the Lord is doing here. He's going to Eli, and he's saying, why are you regarding your sons more than you're regarding what I've commanded from the ancient days? Okay, and so it would be the same thing. Why are you letting your children tell you how it's going to be in your house? You need to be looking to the Lord and then you need to be raising those kids in the Lord, okay? And, you know, I went through absolute hell with my daughter when she was a teenager, and also with my granddaughter when she was a teenager. It's very difficult, okay? But you still have to stand firm about precepts. Now, the end of my story is that my daughter has alienated herself from me. She's just never wanted to serve the Lord, and I haven't demanded it of her. I taught her well, but you know, she's just continued to be so wicked to the point of criminality, which, you know, that's her cross to bear. And I've been praying and praying and praying, and the Lord keeps sparing her life, and I pray he continues to do so. Now, my granddaughter has just run because she at one point did walk with the Lord really strongly, and she's turned away. And of course, her mother has alienated her from me because her mother is very jealous that I got to raise her. But, you know, she could have come back anytime. But not to belabor this story to you, because I know some of you have really heard it. But the point I'm making is I did hold the line with my kids. And my daughter just walked away with a big screw you. My granddaughter has just sort of done the same thing. They know that I'm going to continue to serve the Lord, and to be around me convicts them. They don't want anything to do with it because now they're following their own voice instead of the Lord's voice. And, you know, I'm just praying for them. Okay, so let's get back to it. So he's saying, God is saying to Eli, the parent, why do you see, and this is the other thing, I sleep well at night because I know I held the line and I did what the Lord asked me to do with my kids. Regardless of the decisions they've made now to run from the Lord, I did my job. So the Lord's not going to come to me and say, Autumn, how come you honored your kids more than you honored my precepts? That's not going to happen to me. And I made sure of it because I knew this story. I'd been taught this story. I'd heard this story preached on. So, you know, if you have trouble standing up and you, by your own definition, are being cowardly with your kids, get some help, okay? Go to your pastor. Do something, okay? Because you can't, you know, it's like old age is not for the cowardly, and neither is raising kids, okay? You've got to do something. If you feel that you're not doing the job, then because you're being cowardly and letting them run all over you, then you've got to get support somewhere. You've got to. It's imperative. You don't want the Lord just, you know, making it hard for those kids and hating your kids because you didn't stand, okay? And I'm not here to condemn anybody. Don't feel condemned. This is just me saying to you, if you're struggling, please get some support, okay? Because you don't want the Lord to come and say, why are you letting this happen? Not that we can control every aspect, but we can stand strong about precepts, okay? We don't have to buckle under kids screaming, I hate you. That's typical. They all do that, okay? All right, so why do you honor your sons more than me by fattening yourselves on the choice parts of every offering made by my people Israel? So Eli was even offering what the kids were bringing, as they were basically strong-arming and bullying these sacrifices out of the Israelites. Okay, that's not right. Therefore, it would be like if your kids were dealing drugs and then they came home and you all sat down and did drugs together. And it happens in some families, okay? I know it's not happening in yours, but that would be an even better example of a parent who is not doing the job, okay? It's okay to feel scared to get in there with your kids. It's okay, but get some help, okay? A little unsolicited advice there, but to tie in with the story. Therefore, the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, remember this is a prophet who's come to Eli, he says, therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promised that members of your family would minister before me forever. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me. Those who honor me I will honor, but those who despise me will be disdained, which means looked down on. The time is coming when I will cut short your strength and the strength of your priestly house, so that no one in it will reach old age. God, that's terrible. And you will see distress in my dwelling, meaning in the temple and the place where they live. Although good will be done to Israel, no one in your family line will ever reach old age. Every one of you that I do not cut off from serving at my altar, I will spare only to destroy your sight and sap your strength, and all your descendants will die in the prime of life. That is awful, guys. If you've made it past 60, you're blessed, okay? Praise the Lord, okay? Every one of you that I do not cut off from serving at my altar, I will spare only to destroy your sight and sap your strength. That's horrible. He's saying these kids are going to make you want to pull your hair out, or these relatives. And what happens to your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, will be assigned to you. They will both die on the same day. I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who will do according to what is in my heart and mind. I will firmly establish his priestly house, and they will minister before my anointed one always. Then everyone left in your family line will come and bow down before him for a piece of silver and a loaf of bread and plead, appoint me to some priestly office so I can have food to eat. So his family's basically going to be rejected from the line of Levite priests, and they should have free food, land, housing, everything, right? So he's saying, no, they're going to even come to the priest and say, basically, hire me. And they're going to be rejected. So he's basically taken Eli's family and booted them. Now, I know our children are not in training to be priests, so there is definitely an extra firmness on the Lord's part because this is a priestly family. But I don't think it matters, because one of your kids could be a Billy Graham in the making. You know, this is Old Testament. Now, there are stronger punishments maybe for those who prophesy, teach, evangelize. If they're out of God's will, if they're doing wrong, they are held to higher account, okay? So they have to be careful. But once again, don't let your kids run the house, okay? Because if we can pull one thing out of this, it's the father ruining his sons by not disciplining them, by not standing firm and saying no. If it were me, I would have put Hophni and Phinehas out of the temple. I would have said, you guys got to go. And I certainly wouldn't have sat down and eaten that food with them. And and Eli's getting terribly punished for it. So I love you very much. Tomorrow we'll go to the 3rd chapter of 1 Samuel. We'll see what happens with Samuel. He's still a little boy. And you have a wonderful night. Once again, take what you need of what I share and leave the rest, but don't leave the word, okay? Pull out of it what you can pull out of it, okay? And remember Hannah's prayer. The Lord is good to the just, and the wicked will not prosper. You have a wonderful evening. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.